This is 911. Who is this?
Walked into this Walmart with that assault-style rifle. Thousands running in fear.
Though it's been over 20 years since the initial shocking news of the Columbine High School mass shooting, today we find ourselves plagued with a terrible scourge of mass shootings and rising suicide rates, and it only seems to be getting worse. There is both anecdotal and confirmed evidence that many recent senseless mass murders and suicides have been a consequence of ingesting prescribed psychiatric drugs. In Gary Null's 2005 documentary, The Drugging of Our Children, Michael Moore speculates about what led Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold to murder so many of their classmates at Columbine High School.
In Bowling for Columbine, we never really came up with the answer in terms of why this happened. I think we did a good job of exposing all the reasons that were given were a bunch of BS.
Of the top 31 drugs that are associated with violence, 31 prescription drugs of all kinds, 26 of those are psychiatric drugs. Ironically, probably the most robust research is the drug company research themselves. That's even a very, very small percentage, like 0.01% of those who take the drugs. There would be hundreds of people a day committing violent acts because of psychiatric drugs.
On September 9, 2001, in a state of confusion and hopelessness, I put a .38 Special Smith & Wesson revolver under my chin and pulled the trigger.
I went from being a shy and mildly depressed but never suicidal kid to being overcome with thoughts of hurting and killing myself while on the SSRI drugs, thoughts which I acted on.
He told me, I cannot stand the way this drug makes me feel. 2 days later, he committed suicide.
Caitlin Elizabeth McIntosh. Well, it's actually only a two-dimensional image of her, but it's all I have left. She died of suicide at age 12 years, 3 months. Just 8 weeks after being put on Paxil and then Zoloft.
Would you people put your children on this drug?
I believe there should be an investigation in terms of what pharmaceuticals, prescribed pharmaceuticals, these kids were on. And perhaps parents, it would have a shocking, it would be shocking, I think, to the millions of parents who prescribe this for their kids, if it was finally explained to them, if this is the case, that this perhaps occurred for no other reason other than because of these prescriptions.
Healthy volunteers in psychiatric trials also develop these effects from psychiatric medications. We've even seen it in people that are prescribed psychiatric medication for disorders such as headache or pain or for stress-related issues. So people with no psychiatric conditions can develop these side effects of aggression, behavior changes. People do things they would not normally do, something uncharacteristic of them after starting these psychiatric medications.
So how is it that psychiatric drugs increase the risk of violence and suicide? How does that happen? Well, all psychiatric drugs numb emotions. They take away emotions. And when you take away emotions, you take away caring and conscience. And when you take away caring and conscience, you increase the risk of suicide and violence. Because one of the reasons people don't commit suicide and violence is they know that suicide is going to be devastating for their family and friends, and violence is wrong. So when you take away that awareness and that caring, you increase the risk of suicide and violence. It's that simple.
What we see at Warfighter Advance is that hundreds of men and women come through the program and they tell the same story, that they were never suicidal, not one day in their life until they were put on psychiatric medications. And then they never thought of anything else. They just wanted to die. They wanted to commit suicide. They thought of how to do it. And they couldn't pull themselves out of it. And then when they stopped taking the psychiatric medications and they were withdrawn, the thoughts went away. Some of them ended up in a cycle even where they had a different medication then re-administered, and they became suicidal again, and it was withdrawn and it stopped, and something else was tried and they became suicidal. And they'll talk about this cycle, and they're relieved when they learn that this wasn't their imagination. This thing that they observed happening is actually a valid experience.
I just heard the news. They found her on the floor, an empty bottle of pills, no tape to the door. Have you read the news? A 16-year-old boy brought a gun to school. The town has lost all joy. Sometimes I just wanna cry. Tell me why they all died. Every time I see the news, here come the mystery blues. Now some people say it's just pure evil. Others say mass murder, suicide. But how come no one ever wants to tell us all the drugs the shooter was prescribed? Till we find out the answer, got to call it prescripticide. Prescripticide. I just heard the news. A veteran shot 23. They called him mentally ill. File under lock and key. Ooh. Have you read the news? Death toll on the rise. No one has the answers. Got to open up our eyes. Ooh. Now they love to tell us all the bloody details. They'll interview everyone who survived. But there's one clue at every crime scene, that someone continues to hide. So how come no one ever wants to tell us all the drugs The shooter was prescribed. Till we find out the answer, got to call it prescripticide. Prescripticide. Prescripticide.